My son called me in tears. My wife told me she'd taken away his insulin pump because he hadn't finished his after-school chores. She said he could earn it back after dinner. I told him, "Don't move, I'm on my way." After hanging up, I dialed 911 and reported a medical emergency involving a child. I drove home with police behind me while she tried to convince the officers it was just discipline. Lucas is 10. He's had type 1 diabetes since he was 5, and every day since then has been a crash course in vigilance, in numbers, in alarms, in the constant pressure of knowing that insulin isn't optional. It's survival. If something slips, things can go bad fast. And kids, they're just kids. They need adults to keep them alive. My wife, Emily, is 33. We've been married a decade. When Lucas was born, she was the softest, most attentive person I knew. She would wake up for every nighttime fuss before I even heard it. She packed perfect lunches, she read him stories in silly voices. I thought, this is the person I want raising my child. The shift didn't happen in an instant. It crept in slowly, the way mold grows in the corners of a room you're certain you cleaned. At first, she complained about the late-night glucose checks. Then she'd roll her eyes when I corrected carb counts. Then she'd sigh dramatically when his CGM alarm beeped during dinner, saying he always picked the worst times to need things. But she still cared, I thought. She still loved him. Stress can make anyone snap. I told myself these things until they became excuses. The first time she used his diabetes as punishment was a small thing. He refused to put on his shoes, so she didn't let him have his usual bedtime snack. His blood sugar was trending low, and I caught it before it dipped dangerously, but I should have seen that moment for what it was, a line crossed. It escalated from there. Delayed juice when he was dropping, taking batteries out of his glucose meter because he'd mouthed off, telling him that if he wanted his pump in the mornings, he had to show he deserved it by cleaning his room. Every time I confronted her, she'd cry. She'd say parenting a child with special medical needs was overwhelming, that I didn't support her, that I always assumed she was wrong. And every time, I softened. I told myself it was stress, exhaustion, fear. But none of those things justify risking a child's life. 2 weeks before everything blew up, Lucas whispered to me late one night that his mom had hidden his pump in her bedroom drawer earlier that day because he'd forgotten to take out the trash. He'd spent hours terrified that his sugar would skyrocket. He didn't tell her because he was scared she'd be angry. That confession punched a hole straight through me. I confronted Emily the next morning. She brushed it off like it was nothing. "He needs consequences," she said. "You coddle him so much that he'll never learn responsibility." I told her if she touched his medical devices again, ever, I'd take him and leave. She scoffed, asked if I'd really throw away our marriage over one stupid parenting disagreement. I told her it wasn't a disagreement. It was survival. She stared at me like she didn't understand what I was saying. Maybe she truly didn't. Then yesterday happened. I was at work, phone on silent because of a meeting I couldn't miss. When I walked out, I saw the missed calls, 9 of them, all from Lucas's phone. My heart dropped so fast I thought I might pass out. When he answered, he was sobbing, gasping, trying to breathe between words. "Dad, I don't have my pump. Mom took it. I'm dizzy. Dad, I'm scared." I could barely get the words out when I asked for his mother. She answered like she'd been expecting me to overreact. "He didn't finish his chores," she said. "Dinner's in 2 hours. He can have it then. I'm not negotiating." I told her she was endangering his life. She insisted she wasn't, that he had plenty of insulin still working, that I always made everything dramatic. I hung up and called 911. The dispatcher asked if the child had access to insulin. "No," I said. "No, he does not." That was enough. I sped home, running 2 red lights I don't even remember. I stayed on the phone with Lucas as long as I could. His voice kept fading, wavering between confused and exhausted. He kept saying he felt sick, that he couldn't think straight. By the time I reached the driveway, police and paramedics were right behind me. Lucas was slumped against the arm of the couch, breathing hard, his cheeks blotchy and hot. His CGM read 327 and rising fast. Sweat clung to his hairline. He looked terrified. The paramedics immediately asked, "Where's his pump?" Emily stood in the kitchen doorway, arms crossed, looking bewildered that anyone else might see her behavior as what it was. "I took it because he was being disrespectful," she said. "He was only going to be without it for a couple hours. You all are blowing this out of proportion." The paramedics stared at her like she'd just confessed to poisoning him. The police asked again where the pump was. She resisted at first, said she didn't appreciate being treated like a criminal, then finally grabbed it from her purse and handed it over. The moment the paramedic clicked it back onto Lucas, he visibly relaxed, though he still looked sick. They bolused him carefully, monitoring him as the insulin began working. When the officer asked if I wanted to press charges, I looked at Lucas, shaking, scared, gripping my arm, and said yes. Emily's shock was instant. Her face went ashen. She insisted she was teaching him discipline, that I was undermining her, that she didn't mean harm. But the officers weren't buying it. When they cuffed her, she started screaming that she was being treated unfairly, that it was just parenting. Lucas flinched every time she yelled. He was taken to the hospital for monitoring, and by then his numbers were stabilizing. The doctor there told me he'd been very close to developing DKA. Another hour or so, she said, and we'd be looking at a very different outcome. CPS came shortly afterward. They spoke to Lucas gently, and he told them everything, more than he told me. Times when she'd withheld juice, times when she'd ignored low alarms, times when she said he was being dramatic. I felt sick listening, guilty, furious, heartbroken. I should have acted sooner. The CPS worker made it clear Lucas couldn't go home unless Emily was out of the picture. I told her that wouldn't be a problem. Emily bonded out later that night and called my phone over a dozen times, switching between apologies, accusations, and threats. I didn't answer. I recorded every voicemail and sent them to a lawyer. By morning, I'd filed for an emergency custody hearing. Lucas stayed with me in a hotel for several days. Every night, he triple-checked his pump before bed, terrified someone might take it again. When he woke up from nightmares, he'd climb into my bed, clutching his CGM like a lifeline. The hearing was brutal for Emily. Every piece of evidence, her past actions, the 911 call, the paramedics' testimony, painted a devastating picture. She tried to claim I'd exaggerated everything, tried to insist she was being punished for one mistake, but the judge saw through it instantly. He told her point blank, withholding life-saving medical equipment from a child is not discipline, it is abuse. He gave me full custody. She was granted supervised visitation only, pending the criminal case, and she was not to come within 500 feet of our home. She violated that order twice. Each time, she was arrested. Her criminal trial dragged on for months. Experts testified about the dangers of withholding insulin. One doctor stated plainly that Lucas could have died. The jury found her guilty of child endangerment. She received probation with strict conditions, therapy, classes, and absolutely no contact outside supervised visits. She broke probation half a year later, trying to approach Lucas at school. She served 3 months in jail. Lucas is safe now, thriving even. His numbers are better than they've ever been. He's sleeping better, laughing more. Art class is his new favorite thing. He draws superheroes with insulin pumps and CGMs, which breaks my heart but also makes me proud. He's reclaiming his story. He still goes to therapy. He still has moments where he panics if his pump beeps, but he knows he's safe. He knows no one is going to take his lifeline away again. Emily sends letters sometimes. I read them before deciding if he can. So far, he hasn't read any. He says he's not ready. I tell him he doesn't have to be. People tell me I'm a good father. I don't always believe them. Good fathers don't miss the signs. Good fathers don't let things escalate to emergency rooms and police reports. But I'm trying every day to be better, To be the parent who doesn't ignore warning signs again. I can't undo what happened. I can only make sure it never happens again. And it won't. Not on my watch.